not, you send them home, they get paid. So those individuals that were trying to get back into the Department of Education and do their jobs, they just really had a passion for their jobs because whether or not they stayed home or not, they got paid. It's not like the rest of us blue collar workers where we get paid for our presence. They got paid even if they didn't show up. So if their boss tell them go home and don't come back to work, they still got paid. But now with the furloughed workers, they're not getting paid. And on top of that, another 700,000 essential employees are being forced to work without knowing when their next paychecks will arrive. So these individuals are going to keep doing their jobs and just not receiving income. Now, I just want to take a side note before we keep going that remember when I was telling you guys about having that rainy day fund, the emergency fund, setting up between 6 months and 18 months worth of emergency savings. These are the type of situations that that's for. It doesn't matter if you're a $50,000 a year worker or a $350,000 a year government agent. Situations like this happens every year. If the shutdown is 30 days long, these government agents will not have an income for 30 days, which means that those individuals that live from check to check that had their rent due on the first, it is after the fifth right now. They're receiving late fees. They're receiving notices for eviction if they're not living in a government funded location. If they're paying for their own standard of living, they're getting notices of eviction right now because they don't have the money to pay their rent. Anybody who goes from month one to month two and the rent isn't paid by the 15th of the second month, they're starting to get scheduled for eviction by the end of the month. So having that extra financial capital isn't just for poor folk to make ends meet. Having that extra financial capital is for anybody in this country for any reason because COVID showed you that you could be unemployed for a year and a half. And that means you should have more than a year and a half worth of money set aside. Unemployment has showed you that you can be unemployed for 6 to 9 months before you find a second job or a new job, which means you should have more than that in case you need to change your job, especially if you hate your job. You should have emergency funds, especially if you hate your job. Because the day that you decide that you're not going to put up with this shit anymore, that's the day that you can give your father the Stone Cold Steve Austin two middle fingers and walk out of the building with your head held high and know that you're not going to suffer for the next 3 months. But when you're living from paycheck to paycheck, you have to beg for your hours. You have to beg for more time. You have to submit to mistreatment on a job that doesn't appreciate you because if you get fired today, you won't be able to buy food in 6 days. This is why I teach you guys about how to save and invest and how to pay attention to what's going on in the economy because if you don't have a backup plan, we don't even have the ability to focus on your 20-year plan. You don't even have a 3 week plan. You don't have a backup plan for the next 60 days. And that's 1.5 million workers that are experiencing this um, shortage of income with no sight of expected pay. So everything that they thought they was going to get paid this week, they didn't get it, and they don't know when their next check is going to come. Automatic bill pay is being disrupted. Bank fees for not having enough money in their account to cover those overdrafts because they had overdraft protection to cover their stuff. And these workers and their families are suddenly facing immense financial uncertainty. So you got to think about this 1.5 million families who just last week had a stable income are now looking at their mortgages, car payments, grocery bills with all the concern of actually being employed while still showing up for work every day. These aren't just bureaucrats in Washington. It's not like, oh, it's the Congress. Who cares about them? They are the food inspectors, scientists, and administrative staff in every state. They are your neighbors. And for them, this isn't a political game, it's a personal financial crisis. Then you have the 700 essential personnel. These are the people who depend on who we depend on to keep the country running safely. We're talking about TSA agents. So you already know if you fly in this month, the TSA agents at the airport, they got to show up, but they're going to be in a bad mood because they're not getting paid. Air traffic control agents, FBI agents, border patrol agents. These government uh, 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 agents has decided that their jobs are too critical to stop, but they're not being paid on time. So they are expected to show up and protect the nation while their own financial situation becomes more precarious. So I'm just going to tell you right now, while things are going the way they're going, be extra respectful to your TSA agents. Show extra love to the law enforcement agents and FBI agents that are out there doing whatever it is that they got to do every day. Because a lot of them might not even be getting paid. So when you getting pulled over and getting that traffic ticket by that police officer that's got to meet his quotas, knowing that he ain't got no damn salary, don't give him a bad day because he probably looking at a foreclosure right now and he's just trying to do his damn job until his paycheck come in to pay for his damn babysitter. Sometimes you got to look at your bad day from the other side of the fence and really recognize that you're not the only one because your money might be coming in guaranteed and the person on the outside of your vehicle is having a very shitty week right now. So this is not just an economic risk, it's natural security concerns. The pain ripples outward from there. Some programs that vulnerable Americans rely on are feeling the strain because food assistance programs like WIC, which many of families have used, are facing potential disruptions. Some federal funded preschools have had to close their doors, creating a crisis for parents who rely on them for childcare. So now you have parents bringing their kids to work day and calling off because they don't have babysitters, which means you're now dealing with certain places that are understaffed because the families can't perform their regular duties because the system has been set aside. If you need to get a passport, processing centers are facing severe delays. Small businesses with government contracts aren't getting paid, pushing them towards financial trouble. Some of them aren't even able to fulfill the contracts because they don't have the materials, because they don't have the funding to get the materials. Restaurants and shops near federal offices are seeing their customer base disappear overnight because you have a bunch of people that got furloughed and the ones that didn't get furloughed didn't get paid. So now the maximum quantity of customer base that they had from the government agencies having their employees walk right outside and go to the local shops and get their food, drinks, and entertainment, they're not even able to do that. This is the real world shockwave. It's a direct hit to spending and confidence. The twin engines of the United States economy all brought to a screeching halt. So, what is the official reason for all of this? The narrative from Washington is that it's a classic case of the political dysfunction. The two parties failed to pass the spending bills needed to keep the government funded past September 30th deadline. They point to specific disagreements over policies and funding priorities as the main sticking point. The debates raging in Washington include sweeping healthcare reforms, new gun laws, and aggressive immigration policies. At the heart of the budget fight are proposals to defund programs in so called blue states, which critics have called an attempt to blatantly rob political opponents of federal funding. Meanwhile, the administration's hardline immigration stance have drawn challenges from a variety of critics, including religious leaders. You'll see leaders from both parties on TV blaming each other. One side accusing the other of wanting a blank check for their spending agenda. The other side fires back, accusing their opponents of holding the American economy hostage to score political points. They'll talk about procedural hurdles and use beltway jargon that makes the whole thing seem incredibly complicated, while also assuring you that this is just part of the process. They portray this as another temporary, unfortunate political spat that we will get resolved eventually. And it's true that showdowns have happened before. They are pretty messy and painful. Every year we have this happen around December that we don't meet the budget deadline and that pushes tax season back yet another week. Tax season used to start at the beginning of January, and now tax season is starting to start at the end of January, beginning of February, still having a due date of April 15th. But they have always in the past ended with a compromise once the economy and public pressure becomes too great for one or both sides to ignore. Nevertheless, with each new shutdown, the positions seem more rigid and the stakes feel much higher. But with each shutdown, the rhetoric seems to get sharper and even more positions become even more rigid than the previous. Why? If this was just about a simple budget fight, why does it feel like the stakes are getting even higher each time? Observers are starting to ask if these repeated shutdowns are causing long term damage that goes beyond the immediate economic cost. This is where we need to look past the day to day headlines. During a shutdown, the country's attention is understandably focused on the furloughed workers and the economic damage. But these events also serve as a flashpoint for bigger debates about the balance of power and the health of our governing institution. These shutdowns isn't just a story about a budget, it's a moment that forces us to look at the fragility of the systems that we rely on. With that in mind, it's worth examining some of the broader concerns that are being raised by political observers and watchdog groups. So, this shutdown comes as the U.S. has a signaled uh, more unilateral approach to global affairs by withdrawing from key multi institutional agreements like the Paris Climate Accord and the World Health Organization. Furthermore, the administration is deeply engaged in the Middle East, rejecting Hamas ultimatums related to Gaza to reshape U.S. involvement in the conflict. New executive orders have also been signed to restrict entry from several countries deemed national security threats, including Iran, Afghanistan, and Venezuela, further tightening immigration policies. This shutdown isn't just a story about a budget, it's a moment of national paralysis happening on the world stage, forcing us to look at the fragility of the system that we rely on. Please pay attention to this. One of the primary concerns that are arising during any shutdown is how federal powers are wielded. So, critics of the administration often express fear that the shutdown could be used as an opportunity to advance a political agenda through executive actions. For example, concerns are often raised about the selective implementation or delay of funding. During this shutdown, some opposition figures have voiced allegations that the administration could be slowing down their disbursement of funds for projects in states that are going to be led by the political opponents. And they are conse- uh, concrete examples of the administration using its power in antagonistic way instead of for the betterment of the country. Clean energy projects totaling billions of dollars have been frozen specifically in states with senators who oppose the administration. Clean energy, we need that. This demonstrates the clear effort to leverage federal support based on political calculations. One governor called the move, I said before, blatant attempt to punish the political opposition. So, this kind of political tactic, if it were to happen, would be a major departure from the norm. The federal government is supposed to serve all Americans equally, regardless of how their states voted. Using federal funds as a tool for political reward or punishment would risk turning policy disagreements into economic warfare with citizens caught in the middle. Now, I just want to step aside for a second and just let you guys know that you've got a billionaire in the White House. Everything is about money. Instead of voicing an opinion, billionaires talk with their money. You guys know that old saying that money talks and BS walks. If you want somebody who needs your money to do what you want, you don't give them the money until they do what you want. You want people who do what you want to keep doing what you want. You give them the money that they ask for to keep doing what you want. So if you have positive support from certain states, they're not going to receive a delay in funding, even during the shutdown. But during the shutdown, certain states that aren't in your favor probably might get a delay in receiving funding. They still get the funding, but a minor inconvenience in the release of the capital, which forces them to comply. You guys remember that political addressment that happened earlier this year, where Maine was one of those states that was opposing the two gender laws that were being passed by the president. And Trump made it clear that if you don't comply, that you will stop getting funding. Now, while certain news outlets might be saying that he is directly attacking blue states just because of their voting prowess, if you pay attention to the fact that if there was a presidential decree that occurred and rebellious state leaders refused to comply with the presidential decree that signed into an executive order, federal law is the foundation of all the laws that are built below that. State law is a stricter version of the federal law, but it does not contradict the federal law. So when a federal law is put into action via an executive order, the states are supposed to comply with that more often than not. When states refuse, that's when you start having a disagreement uh, amongst the authorities. And a disagreement amongst the authorities. Our Constitution clearly states that if two laws contradict each other, that the laws are nullified in your favor. So if the government starts making laws that the state doesn't agree with, then the citizens have no law to comply to based on Constitution. So if the president says, well, I'm not going to continue to fund your state if you're not complying with the laws that I am setting down, he's not just getting you because it's a blue state. He's getting you because you didn't fucking listen. You did not follow instructions. That's what's going on in certain situations. Now, in other situations, yeah, of course, it could be just political disarray based on control of certain people's agendas. But the chaos of the shutdown provides an environment where such actions could be harder to track because allegedly nobody is supposed to be getting money anyway, which is why the watchdog groups monitor these situations so closely. Another debate that tends to resurface during financial crisis is the one surrounding the so-called $1 trillion coin. We just heard about this coming just recently. This is a fringe economic theory based on a legal loophole that theoretically allows the United States Treasury to mint a platinum coin of any value. In theory, a president could order a mint of a high value coin, deposit it at the Federal Reserve, and use the funds to pay the country's bills, like military salaries, Social Security, without congressional approval. Now, I understand that Bitcoin is 115, $120,000. But just think for a second. And I had to pause. And the reason why I paused, we've got a $30 trillion deficit, right? So if he does a $1 trillion platinum coin, you would have at the federal mint $30 trillion, 30 coins, which is less coins than you would find in your ashtray in your car. $30 trillion in a Corona bag in the federal mint, able to completely eradicate the deficit. For years, this has been dismissed as a radical, almost comical nuclear option that no administration would seriously ever consider, as it could spark a constitutional crisis over the separation of powers and radical shaking of global financial systems. But think about it. If the United States was to create $1 trillion coins, because we used to have $1,000 bills, and the Gen Zs don't know nothing about it. Some millennials don't even know about it, right? Some of the 2000 babies don't know about the $1,000 bill that used to be in circulation, the $500 bill that used to be in circulation in the early 90s, late 90s. If you have one now, keep it because it might be worth more than $1,000 since it's been discontinued. But $1 trillion coin, like legit, there are some countries that would invest in the possession of $1 trillion coin minted from the United States. So, really, if they did do something like that, we could finally become the kind of country that is not operating in debt. Every year, it's like 300 trillion in debt, 30 trillion in debt. I think the lowest I can remember hearing is 15 trillion in debt. But say they minted 100 of these things and just really blew up the numbers, we would finally be operating in the profit. And that's crazy because the value of the US dollar is based off of the debt. The less debt we have, the more valuable our currency is across the world. So while that remains a fringe idea, funny news, the Treasury has recently taken a different yet equally controversial step. It unveiled a draft design for a new $1 coin to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, featuring Donald Trump's likeness. Now, Donald Trump is already on the gold visa. Now he's putting his face on the US $1 coin. If produced before he dies, Trump would be the first living president on US currency, an act that is currently prohibited by law. Okay? One side of the coin is proposed to show Trump's profile with the words liberty, while the other side depicts him raising his fist with the words fight, fight, fight. Oh, Michael says $1,000 bill is still legal tender, but it is obsolete. No, yeah, I am well aware that it is still legal tender, but I believe that because it is discontinued, meaning that they're no longer printing them, that the value of that $1,000 bill might be worth more now because of its historical relevance in society. The $1,000 bill and the $500 bill are legal tender. Not too many Gen Zs would recognize it. If you walked up with $1,000 bill, they would think that that's play money, but they're legitimate forms of currency. But $1,000 bill at this point might be worth $2,000 to $10,000 depending on the condition of the bill and the age that it was printed. So yeah, you're right. It is still legal tender. It is just no longer used and no longer printed. And any of the $1,000 bills that were sent back to the United States government or to the banks, I'm pretty sure got destroyed if somebody did snatch it out of the bank's possession before they got destroyed. Because banks do not hand out anything larger than $100 denomination anymore. Not that I am aware of in the United States, at least. You can ask for a $500 bill, but it's not likely that they'd give it to you. And then if they did, it's very few places would accept it because you got very few places right now that are willing to take more than a 50. So if you did walk out of the bank with $1,000 bills, you would have to go back to a bank to break it into $100 bills and then take it to a Walmart and break those hundreds into 20s or put it into an ATM machine and have that ATM machine spit out 20s so that you could then spend those 20s in regular day-to-day operations. And while the idea has been discussed recently in academic and political circles for years, it's important to be clear that there is no credible evidence the administration is actively planning to mint either one of these coins as of yet. However, the fact that the concept even exists and is discussed during shutdowns highlights the immense pressure that these events puts on the constitutional norms that separate the powers of Congress and the president. It's a sign of the extreme measures that are sometimes floated when political gridlock becomes severe. Now, President Trump is probably one of the most radical presidents that we have seen in our history because a lot of presidents have so much opposition that they can barely get through their term with enough cooperation to make a difference. Some presidents have no problem with pushing some kind of agenda, but even with little opposition, they have little effort towards making very much radical change. They're just trying to keep things afloat and maybe add one or two extra things to the fold. Trump is doing a complete overhaul inside of the first year. Okay. The most change that has been historically documented in less than 12 months. The most change in the first 30 days, the most change in the first 90 days. And he still has 3 years and 3 months left to go. He's got a lot of stuff to accomplish. Perhaps the most significant long term concern of this is the effect of the shutdown on the people who run the government and defend the nation. Because as we've seen, with 1.5 million workers are in the financial limbo, the federal employee union and government watchdogs worry about much more permanent impacts. They raise concerns about the potential brain drain if shutdowns become regular occurrences. Experienced and highly skilled civil servants, the scientists, economists, and policy experts who have deep institutional knowledge may decide to leave the government for private sector. So you have to understand that the best paid people on the payroll might decide to quit and work in the private sector. Imagine how football season would operate if some of the most expensive football players were told you're not going to get paid for the next 4 or 5 games. Some of them, if they're not Drew Brees, some of them wouldn't even come to play anymore. He said, absolutely, as a collective. Like most people don't see too many $2 bills either. Yeah, yeah, $2 bills was very popular back in the day too, and you don't see $2 bills either. So this is a huge situation. At the National Institutes of Health, for example, new patent administration and patient clinical trials have been stopped, and long term research projects are at risk. At the EPA, where nearly 90% of the staff is furloughed, work to monitor pollution and protect public health has been halted. When I start talking about pollution, I'm going to sit over here and grab my bottle of water. Because that's where we're going to be at. Those of you that is living off of that faucet water, y'all better start boiling y'all stuff. If y'all ain't been boiling y'all city water, y'all better start boiling. Go down to the little Walmart. Go get you one of those. Um, we used to call them Kool-Aid pitchers, but it used to be a water pitcher that had the filter in it. You can make Kool-Aid with it, but the purpose was for you to boil your water on the stove and then pour it into that filter and then put it in the fridge and freeze that son of a bitch. Then when you take it out, you got you cold drink that has been purified by yourself. That is the safest way to go in this day and age. Now, that you're going to see when you're boiling your water, for those of you who actually have city water that does not have the water purifiers on your faucets or in your pipelines. You guys, when you boil your water, you're going to see this film going across the top. You want to skim that film off. That's the pollution that they normally supposed to get at the plant, but not always do, especially in low income communities and in Florida with the reclaimed water. Not always do they get it all. So you skim that off the top and then take the rest of the water and pour it into your Kool-Aid pitcher or your water pitcher with the filter in it, and then filter it one more time, put it into the fridge, let it freeze, and then you got you some clean water. So there's a side note for anybody who wants to have better drinking water and not have to pay that $5 or $6 a case for 28 bottles of water. There you go. You can do that. Michael says it's illegal to print a living president on a coin without the support of Congress. It's two laws. Well, Donald Trump is doing everything without Congress. Michael says, would that be like putting the crown on your own head? Actually, no, I think it goes one step further. He didn't just put the crown on, he put on the cape. He's got the king's guard. He's got the throne. So now it's almost like the President Trump sitting on top of the Game of Thrones, looking like Triple H's King of Kings entrance at WrestleMania. That's kind of what we got going on right now, and it's wild. It's wild. He is literally doing the things that he's doing right now. He's putting his face in places where he will go down in history because as long as no president that comes behind him has enough motivation to take Donald Trump's face off of the golden visa, every person that spends $5 million on a golden visa will get a Donald Trump gold visa. And it will always be that way, etching him in stone. Other countries around the world who will see that golden visa. Because if you get a golden visa, you don't have to stay in America, but you can come to America whenever you want to. But you go back to your own country. Look, I've got a golden visa. Donald Trump. If he puts himself on U.S. currency, even if he's talking about it now, because he's old as fuck, he wasn't that much younger than Joe Biden. So if he lives long enough to finish a third term, if they're talking about it right now, if he died 2 years after this term, they could still put that coin into action and he would be on the US dollar, where we've seen certain presidents that are as far back as the 18 and 1900s still on current US currency. So he would be etched in history for multiple things. So it's more than just uh making us, it's more than just putting a crown on your own head. In this particular situation, he is making a legacy where his grandchildren will be known for what he did, his great grandchildren, just like Martin Luther King is on every major low income neighborhood street. At least one Martin Luther King Drive, Martin Luther King Jr. Drive is somewhere in a low income neighborhood. There's a Martin Luther King library, a Martin Luther King Park, you know, in most states around the country. It's going to be the same way. It's going to be Donald Trump coin and Donald Trump passport and everything of high monetary value or high usage. Donald Trump will be stapled on it. He's rebranding certain aspects of United States history to be Donald Trump. Even if he gets put in the Guinness Book of Records as the most change made by a president, again, etched in history. The best legacy to leave is a legacy that's not based on money, it's based on change. And irony, probably the most change that we've seen since Barack Obama. Barack Obama's campaign was change. Donald Trump's policy was make America great again. I can't say that I'm experiencing greatness right now, but I can say I'm experiencing some change. um, the fear is that repeated disruptions that we would have in our political standings could permanently weaken certain agencies that does the majority of our development. This concern extends to even the military. While active duty personnel are still on their jobs, their pay is going to be delayed. Family members that live off of that pay are going to begin to suffer. Now, granted, active duty personnel typically are living off of the government for the most part. They have housing and they're provided food in some situations to some degree. So they're not feeling the loss of pay in the field as much, but they are feeling the loss of pay when their family members call them and say, we didn't get the money on the first and the bills aren't paid. Active duty military does not have to be deployed overseas because we also have to remember that the National Guard that was being deployed in Memphis is part of the military deployment. And the 1 to 14 million dollars of cost to have the National Guard in Memphis for a number of weeks, that pay, they went from getting paid by the hour at their jobs to now being deployed in another city and not getting paid. Beyond the immediate hardships that this causes, watchdog groups always monitor for any signs of politicalization within the military leadership. And they urge that it's essential for democracy to maintain a clear line between the military and partisan politics, ensuring the armed forces' loyalty is to the Constitution, not a particular political party or leader. The distraction of a shutdown is a time when changes in leadership across the government can happen with less public scrutiny because you've already noticed they did a large quantity of layoffs in federal government, in the feds, which is why these groups pay such close attention to this. This is a lot of change, and we haven't really thought about all of the ways that it has a massive implication. So let's take a step back and look at the whole picture. When viewed in isolation, these issues can seem like just more political noise, but taken together, they paint a concerning picture of the broader impact of government shutdowns. The estimated $7 billion weekly shock to the economy isn't just a temporary problem, it's a symptom of a deeper dysfunction. It creates a crisis that rightly focuses everyone's attention on the immediate financial pain, but the background that we more often ignore is that these events chip away at the foundations of our government. They strain the relationships between the federal government and the states. They spark radical debates about bypassing Congress, constitutional powers of the purse, and they do long term damage to the civil service and the rise of questions about the institutions that are meant to be nonpartisan. This is why this shutdown, like those before it, feel different and more concerning. It's a political stress test of our institutions, and it's unclear how much more stress they can take. Look, the reason I make these live shows is because I believe that understanding how money and politics are truly connected is the first step to navigate the world that we live in. The games played in Washington have a very real impact on your wallet and your savings and your future. Take, for example, the fact that you're not getting paid on the first, you might not be getting paid this Tuesday. You might not get paid next Wednesday. Your loss of food. You don't have money to pay for babysitters and daycare. You don't have money for transportation to get to and from work. Layoffs have certain individual furloughs, but they're layoffs. You have certain individuals that used to work in certain positions that aren't there. So now you have a lack of service. You have a lack of assistance. The distractions of being stressed out. If you were already dealing with money being tight, and now you're dealing with missed paychecks that you cannot control. Now you're not focused on your job. If military personnel are in combat situations and they're concerned that their children aren't getting fed because the money that they're supposed to send back home isn't coming, they're now stressed out about what's going on at home and not focusing on the battlefield, which could jeopardize their safety and cause negative impacts on the advancements of our troops in any type of active duty situation. Distractions from our personal lives distract our um, business life. I saw that Michael said there have been 20 federal shutdowns in America, at least one per year over the past 20 years. I've known that we have had at least one shutdown every year. I don't recall having more than one shutdown in a year, but it is possible that we have had two shutdowns in a year. But I've known that we have had at least one shutdown every year over the past at least 15 years, if not 20. And it's strange that that's becoming a regular occurrence. If you want to stay ahead of these games and get analysis that goes beyond the headlines, you guys have to make sure that you come to the weekly shows because this is where we break down the most important stories and what they really mean for your money. It's completely free for you guys to come to the show and get this information and the best way to stay informed. You also have to make sure that you take the time to join these conversations the same way Mike is here and involved in the conversations, and like and subscribe to the channel. He said those that are getting their Social Security checks should receive them as normal. Well, the Social Security checks and the veterans benefits are going to be coming in without an issue. So you don't have to worry about that. And in some states, if you're getting SNAP, the Food Stamp Assistance Program, you might not receive an issue either. But the cash assistance from the WIC program for diapers, bottles, baby clothes, you might have a problem. And again, like they said, certain government daycare centers are not there. The government daycare centers are not there, meaning that the government daycare employees are not there, which means that they don't have a job. But with the daycare centers not being there, the parents have to pay for private sitters or public daycare instead of government funded daycare. And if they're not getting their regular paychecks, they're not able to pay for that, or they would have to borrow money and take out loans to cover the furlough so that they can pay for the child care while they're still at work. There are a lot of other areas where this becomes a negative situation. For example, the grocery stores as you used to thrive in the sectors where the 1.5 million employees were at. Those grocery stores and other appliance areas, they're suffering because local business that was thriving off of the incomes from those locations, they're not getting that business because nobody's got any money. Those businesses are going to be suffering for a few weeks. Now, what happens is that the businesses that were funded by the local salaries are now laying off their employees because their employee they don't have enough hours, they don't have enough work, so they don't have enough hours. So with the layoffs of those employees, now you have lower income individuals struggling and trying to find a job. So so now they're trying to find a second and third job because the government shutdown has hurt the business, and now they don't have enough income to pay for their own personal life. So this doesn't just stop with just the government people. The same way when they were kicking out immigrants and the money that the immigrants were spending on upper lower class standard of living, the businesses that targeted that market were losing sales, and the loss of sales had them lay off employees, and that was laying off American workers because it did not have the non-legitimate American inhabitants spending money in those establishments. Same thing as you're experiencing right now with the lack of Fed funding. You have lack of Fed spending, and any federally funded or federal agent funded establishment suffering for the next couple weeks. They're usually lasting around 5 days. And last I checked, it's still going. I can double check and see if they actually fixed the shutdown. But last I checked, a few days ago, but today is Monday, the first day since the shutdown. But I think that it's the country's still shut down. Is it not? Has the shutdown stopped? He says, so those who are affected, thank you. Well, I want to thank you guys as well. For those who are getting shafted by the US government, I greatly appreciate you sticking it out. But I also want you guys to take this as a flash in the pan, like hopefully a insightful change in your decision making process. Because before, when these things started happening, it didn't negatively impact people that much that it actually mattered. They was like, oh, a shutdown, it broke the internet that a government shutdown was about to happen. But uh, he said, look, these are terrible statistics now. It hits every third person out of 10. So we've got 385 million people in this country, and it hits 3 out of 10 people. That's 300,000 out of every million, 30 million out of every 100 million, out of every, yeah, out of every 100 million, that's 30 million people being hit. So you're looking at about 90 so million people negatively impacted by this based on those statistics. That's a huge deficit, guys. That's a huge deficit. This is why I tell you guys, y'all gotta start finding ways to put y'all money in better places. Y'all gotta start finding ways to live off of 30% of your income, and y'all gotta start finding ways to put more than 50% of your income into stocks, bonds, real estate, Bitcoin, and other such places, so that y'all have extra money coming in from extra places. Because even if you had real estate in this particular situation and your tenants ended up being government agents, you're not getting rent money. So you have to have a diversified portfolio. And with that diversified portfolio, you'll still have money coming in from somewhere, because certain areas that some people have a niche in and rely on, Those people money gonna be hurting them. He said, no, no, I'm talking their money. I'm talking their money too. Every third person out of money. Every third person. But you got to think about it. If it's 3 out of 10 people, that's 30 million out of every 100 million. You got 380 something million, which is almost 400 million. You're looking at almost 120. You're looking at close to like 110 million individuals that are going to be impacted by that change. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's more than a third of the population. That's a lot. So, yeah, the government shutdown is going to hurt, but that estimated $7 billion weekly drain is definitely real. And it will be felt through a weaker economy, delayed service, and a sense of uncertainty that damages confidence. He says it's another fleecing of Americans. Yeah, but is the shutdown still going though? I asked you about it. I don't know if you checked it yet because today is the 6th. Today is October 6th. You said it usually lasts 5 days, and I'm guessing it's gonna be 5 business days. So Saturday and Sunday was the days off. So you reckon that it'll be over by Wednesday? I think it's still gonna be happening on Friday. I think it's still gonna be happening on Friday. I really do. One of he said the banks still will want their payments on time even if the government is shut down. Bro, everybody want their payment on time. The credit card companies, the banks, the landlord, the car company, everybody gonna want their money on time. The layaway plan that you set up, everybody gonna want their money on time. Repossession industries is going to be making a ton of money. If you was almost about to get your stuff took, it's about to be ready to be took now. Foreclosures is going to start happening. Y'all gonna see. 5 days is a lot in certain situations. Some people are like, oh, that ain't nothing. That ain't nothing. Shit. You be sometimes 5 days is the difference between having life support and not. Literally. Literally. Because think about those families. Like we were just sitting over here talking about the kids in daycare. Think about those families who have elderly family members in assisted living and nursing home situations. And the payments for those situations have defaulted. Think about private school. We're in the middle of the academic semester, actually walking up on the second half of the fall term. Tuition should be due for the spring. You ain't got your money, your kid might not be able to go to school. These are things that impact us in ways where it's not just $7 billion because $7 billion is a big dollar figure for any person who has never seen $100,000 in one place at one time. $7 billion is a lot for any person who hasn't seen $250,000 in a year's time. But it's not just the $7 billion aspect of things. It's the fact that little things like your $50,000 a year salary and or a $70,000 a year salary where $20,000 that was going towards assisted living care and you don't have the money to pay that payment. Does your family member get put out? You know what I mean? Do they not get the care that they're supposed to have? when you have family members on life support systems and you've got to pay that monthly bill to the hospital, and your family member, are they going to pull the plug because the government shut down? Like you have more concern. Whether or not they're going to do it for ethical reasons doesn't change the fact that if you can't afford to pay the bill, they start talking about pulling the plug, and you start having the stress. This heightened level of hypervigilance and anxiety and panic that people experience because they don't have a paycheck and they don't know when the paycheck will come. Yeah, statistically, on average, back in the day, it might have only lasted like 5 days. So, like a week. So, your check might be late a little bit. So, you might get two paychecks next time around, or you might get a paycheck this Friday and another paycheck next Friday because the paycheck that was supposed to come last Friday didn't come on time. Yeah, sometimes that happens. But what happens if this year the shutdown is so serious that it lasts for 2 weeks? What if the shutdown lasts for 30 days? What if this is the longest shutdown in American history? Michael saying new inventory at the car auction, but the only people who gonna be able to afford the cars at the car auction is people that's not being financially compromised by the trickle down effect of the shutdown. The 1.5 million federal workers and their families are going to be on the front lines, but the economic shock wave will eventually reach all of us. And you should be concerned about that part. You should be concerned about how that negatively impacts your money. He said $100 is a lot today. With the government down, with the government shut down, $100 is a lot today. But, you know, a, $1 billion is not a lot of money in an economy where we're starting to look at $250,000 is like middle class. So it is a huge change. And with some of the political changes that the political reform that they're doing during the shutdown, the financial changes that they're going to be made, you're going to start seeing some benefit. Because remember, I told you guys in August that they were going to be doing cutbacks, and I said that in August because of the big beautiful bill that got passed. And then after I said it was going to be doing cutbacks, now they're dealing with this early signs of a shutdown. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy because it's going to negatively impact you for the long term. Michael says that's why we always have an emergency fund. That's why you and I have an emergency fund. A lot of folks that are watching the show did not know that they should have an emergency fund because very few people in America actually have that $1,000 or more in their bank account. You know, so truthfully, most people live from paycheck to paycheck with automatic bill pay. So when situations like this occur, they wish they had extra money on the side. This is when they start taking loans and stuff. And this is when loan agencies are going to start making a lot of money. Pay cash advance, payday loan advance places are going to make a lot of money off of the local population because their paycheck didn't come in this month, you know? But when you recognize that if they're a government agency and their paycheck didn't come in this month, some financial institutions that would loan you money would recognize that your money is currently unstable because you're not getting paid right now. So would they loan you money knowing that you don't got money coming in? Michael said, take a vacation. If you're furloughed, you're forced to take time off from work, you should stay your ass at home and sleep. Because if you spend money on a vacation, you're spending the money that you got to live off of until your next paycheck comes. Like I said, if it's that bad, we're all affected. Nothing I can do. You're right. There isn't much that we can do about this one because if you weren't following the show before, liking and subscribing to the channel and coming here every day and learning ways to change the way you make decisions to improve your personal life and improve your financial life so that you had extra money on the side, you don't have enough money to do what you need to do. But if you start coming, you now can put your money aside and start prioritizing having extra money prepared for situations like this, where worst case scenario, you just got to pull some money out of your stock option and put it towards the debt. One of the next things we're going to have to start doing is start preparing for power outages. Start, since US currency is still a thing, get yourself a little cheap safe from a Walmart or a Sam's Club, Home Depot, Lowe's, or whatever. Order one from Temu online or something like that. Get you $100 to $500 safe and put it in a conspicuous place in your house, and take a percentage of your money out of your paycheck and put it in that safe. It don't matter if it's nothing but a couple $100 a paycheck, and put it in that safe. Outside of the money that you have set in a bank account for easy access, outside of the stock options that you have for easy access, you should have a safe at your house with cash in it. And the reason why that is especially states that are electricity only, when the power grid goes out, before the economy collapses, before the local government collapses, when uh, the power goes out, you can still buy groceries, you can still buy gas. So, matter of fact, when you're putting money in your safe, you're not putting $100 bills in your safe. You're putting 20s, fives, tens, ones in your safe. You're getting stacks of 20s, stacks of tens, stacks of fives, stacks of ones, and putting them into a safe in your house, so that if you need cash, you'll have it. He said, yes, cats and dogs will be missing. he gonna, they're gonna fry them up like a llama, huh? Special shout out to Mexico and Puerto Rico. And they have more garage sales. Well, yeah, a lot of people are going to be selling their stuff because they can't afford to cover the difference. Never take money from your principal. Well, you don't necessarily have to take money from your principal, but the ex dividends are going to be coming in. And instead of reinvesting your ex dividends, you can take your ex dividends and deposit it into your bank account to offset the fact that your paycheck didn't come. So while you might be 2 or 3 days late, you still would be able to take care of all the stuff you need to take care of. And then you can just take the money out of your paycheck and put it back into the stock option later on. So you don't necessarily have to take from your principal. You just have to not reinvest your dividends into your portfolio and live off of the dividends until your check comes. And if you knew that the shutdown was pending, some people who had dividends coming in last week and the week before was depositing those dividends into their bank account so that they would have that capital before the first, so that their bills would be paid until the hoping that the next week goes by and they get their paycheck. But yeah, we have to start putting money aside. But as this crisis continues, I got to urge you guys to look beyond the immediate economic pain. Because while a lot of people are blaming Donald Trump for destroying the current economy, allegedly the changes that he's making right now in the current economy is supposed to be for the betterment of 10, 20, 30 years from now. The current change in the system is going to be catastrophic, but the long-term benefits is allegedly supposed to be so much better if we use it wisely, and people who follow him, follow his lead, keep reinforcing that change. But the fact is that if the system was originally broken before, you have to disassemble it in order to put it together in a better fashion, in order to fix it. So when people say that the economy is in pieces, it's supposed to be in pieces if you're trying to fix it, because you have to take it apart, take out the broken pieces, put in fixed pieces, and then put it back together. The rebuilding phase is going to be when the economy is going to start recovering in a permanent fashion. But the reassembly phase happens after the disassembling phase. And the disassembling phase is what we've been going through since February and March of 2025. Michael says you should always pay yourself first before paying bills. It may not be much at first. It starts to grow on its own. You are correct. If you were paying yourself first and you were taking a large majority of your money and putting it towards stocks, bonds, real estate, and other investment opportunities, since we started talking to you guys about it this year on this and that, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between, then you would have been putting aside a larger quantity of finances that would have been aiding you in your ability to now benefit from some of those finances instead of putting all your money on bills and then taking whatever's left over that you don't put on personal habits and you put that money into the stock option. Instead, you can balance your budget to terminate unnecessary spending and take that extra money and pay yourself first, investing in stock options and savings and stuff, and then pay your essential bills. It would be beneficial to you to live a basic, boring lifestyle for the first 10 years of rebuilding. And people are like, 10 years, that's a lot of fucking time. But you would see that benefit immediately in that first decade. And then the following 10 years, you're starting to live that best life. But that first 5 years is hard because you have to stop paying for unnecessary subscriptions, stop paying for unnecessary services, stop partying like a rock star, stop wasting money on unnecessary dates, stop buying unnecessary lavish gifts for your romantic partner, stop buying unnecessary lavish gifts to impress friends and family, and stop overspending and upgrading to the most expensive cell phone and upgrading to the most expensive car and getting bigger houses just because you got a bigger paycheck and just live the cheapest lifestyle that you can afford to live off of and do the best that you can. That would help. He said, listen to what he says. You will start to see the future. You will start to see, especially when you're living off of dividends with the satellite capture program, the core satellite portfolio I gave you guys before. So I gave you all of the stocks that scroll across. Hold on, let me put them back up there because they weren't up there earlier. All of the stocks are scrolling across the bottom of the screen. If y'all took those stocks and used them, those are the most undervalued stocks on the market. Highest paying dividends, lowest cost to buy in. Y'all could have been picking up those. Most of those are dividend paying stocks. You could be getting capital from those stocks that could be directly deposited back into your bank account without touching your principal, where you could be living off of the interest. Where when this shutdown happened, you had plenty of money to put towards that so that you would not have to worry about the shutdown. If you had a situation where you lost your job, but you had already put enough money aside where the dividends was paying you just as much as your salary, if not more. If you lost your job, got furloughed or laid off or whatever, the money coming in, the dividends coming back to you from the stock option helps pay for your standard of living, helps maintain your loan options and stuff to that effect. There are ways that you could have put your money in places where stuff like this that is unexpected and not guaranteed to happen at the exact same time of year every year, those are the things that you can't prepare for. The X factor of putting away emergency funds in case of an emergency is something that you can do. But when does the emergency occur? That's something you can't control. Michael says, why go to work if all your money is going to someone else to do the math? Look, why go to work if your money ain't coming from someone else? They not even paying your ass right now. Since the first, some people ain't been getting no damn paycheck. Today the sixth. I don't know if the government shutdown is still happening because Michael said that it was supposed to only be around about 5 days, but it's day six. And last I checked, the government was still shut down. And it's Tuesday morning. And as far as I know, come 8 o'clock in the morning, the government should still be shut down. So while it usually stays shut down for 5 days, if it's still shut down in the morning, I'm counting 7 days that it's been shut down. And it's likely to be shut down past Friday. That's my observation. And ironically, because the first was in the middle of a week, the middle of a work week, we're technically on 2 weeks of shutdown because the shutdown happened last week and it's still shut down this week. Like I said, 10 years at 70, where did it go? Let's party, get drunk and naked. Well, at 70 years old, if you ain't got your money put where it's supposed to be at, there ain't much left for you to do. Because I mean, you only got what, 15, 20 years left? If you trying to live to be 90, but if you trying to plan for 84, you only got like 14 years left. So, you know, you're not trying to do a 10-year plan at 70 years old. You trying to live the best life that you can with the income that you have. But if you in your 30s and 40s, 50s and 60s, you got plenty of time. If you in your 20s, you got plenty of time. And if you've got ideally 40 years ahead of you, you can spend 10 of those years buckling down and investing your money wisely so that your money can go to places in the long run that will give you a better life. First 10 years, you tighten your belt strap. Second 10 years, you start loosening your belt strap up a little bit. And then the rest of life, you can live your best life. I've talked to plenty of people about how you can put away 40,000 a year, which is around $4,500 a month, and be able to make it to $1 million in 10 years. If you're in a relationship with somebody, if you're not in a relationship with somebody, you're looking for somebody. The person that you should be looking for should be the kind of person that thinks save and invest. That's the first thing you should be talking about on your first date. Are you an investor? Do you invest in stocks and bonds and stuff? Because if not, I can't fucks with you because you need somebody who is either willing to let you invest the money or they're willing and capable of investing as well. And y'all need to be able to put y'all money in places where your money's making money for you. Because if you can flip your money within 10 years, you can reach that $1 million status. And even with a 15% return on a buy and hold portfolio at $1 million, you're still getting 150,000 a year. Most Americans can find, even if you have to move to a cheaper state, can find affordable living under 60,000 a year, under 50,000 a year. He said help keeps the chaos at the door, which also means that you would be able to quit your job after 10 years of buckling down if you wanted to keep it pushing for another 10 years, where from 20 to 40, you and your romantic partner, y'all hit 1 million at 10 years of y'all relationship, and y'all are aiming for 2 million at or 2.5 million at the 20-year mark of your relationship. By the time y'all 40 or 50 years old, you could go ahead and say, bump it. We can stop because we making $250,000 a year off of our stock option. You could put 50,000 towards the taxation and keep the other 200 grand for your lifestyle. And even in that situation, if you was living at 30% of your income, you would be living a 60 to $70,000 a year lifestyle where you would have plenty of extra money to reinvest or travel the world and buy a bunch of expensive stuff, which means that at 40 or 50 years old, 60 years old, if you did a 20-year plan at 20, you'd be 40. A 20-year plan at 40, you'd be 60, and you would be able to spend the rest of your life doing absolutely nothing. You could retire at 60 to 65. If you started at 45, you could retire at 65 legitimately with enough money where you will not need nothing else. I mean, unless you out there like Floyd Mayweather throwing $10,000 a night in a strip club, then you'd just be broke as fuck. But you will keep getting money coming in because you'll only be throwing away your interest, not your principal. He said, "Cool, opens back up next week." Yes, kill me off now. Are you a saver or a spender? Exactly, and that's a big question to have. And as this crisis continues, I urge you guys to look beyond the immediate economic pain because the bigger story is the long-term health of our government. This isn't about more. This is about more than just a temporary shutdown. It's about a pattern of crisis-driven politics that could permanently change the balance of power in America. Now, the real danger is not the government being shut down for a few weeks. The real danger is the erosion of trust and the weakening of the institutions that happens each time this occurs. So, what will our government look like when it reopens? And what damages will have been done in the process? That's the real questions that we need to be asking. So, what do you guys think? Are these shutdowns just business as usual for Washington, or are we witnessing a slow and steady breakdown for our governing norms? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. With that being, oh, he said $7 million a day to retire on. If you had $7 million a day to retire on, that'd be fantastic. But if you just had $1 to $2 million to retire on, you would still be good. Really, if you're willing to live off of a 50 or $60,000 a year lifestyle, you could retire on $500,000. You don't necessarily have to have. See what I'm saying? You don't necessarily have to have millions and millions of dollars. You just have to have the lifestyle that is less than the cash dividends that are being paid off of your portfolio. He said in 20 years, it will be around 13.2 million. You're right. Look, hey, I'm gonna be running this. I'm gonna be on this. With $13.2 million, I'm gonna be on this. So in 20 years, you're gonna see me still covering this situation, and I'm gonna be sitting over here looking like, damn. The the inflation is gonna kill us. He said, project the future of your money. Well, you need to protect the future of your money and then predict how the future of your money will be utilized and then budget for that. Because when you think about what kind of lifestyle you want to have in the future, you need to think about what you got to do to get there and how much you have to start putting away. So if you want to have $10 million in 10 years, you might want to have to put $10,000 a month aside to get there quickly. When you start talking about putting away $4,000 a month to get there quickly, one person might not be able to afford that because that requires you to make almost 8,000 a month, which means that you making, you know, um 80 to 95,000 a year, you know. But if you got two people putting their money together and each one of them is making 55 or 60,000 a year, it is not as hard for each person to take 20,000 and put it up on the stocks when they're putting their money together for that same $50,000 a year lifestyle. If they both have a $60,000 paycheck and they combine their efforts for one $55,000 a year lifestyle, they could put away a shit ton of money and they would not have to hurt. 750,000 federal employees on furlough. Yes, and 1.5 million essential workers mandatorily required to work without pay, which ultimately means that you have already 2.25 million people directly impacted in the government right now. And the money that they used to spend on stuff is going to directly impact the industries that used to receive their capital. And those industries are going to have blue collar workers that are not going to get paid anymore. And the money that they used to spend is not going to get spent anymore, at least until the government comes back. So it affects more than just the rich. It affects more than just the politics. It affects more than just the people at the top. It affects everybody from the top down. So when it hits you, because it might not hit you this week, it might hit you in 3 weeks. The government might not be shut down anymore, and that's when you get hit by it. Because if you're trying to fly and flights are being delayed, you might be like, shit, that was a product of the shutdown. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to it. All right, so I want to say thank you guys and start off by saying, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you, ladies, to make it make sense. So, ladies, please make it make sense. Fellas, I give you guys information like this, and tomorrow you got to come and see how the stock market has changed because of the shutdown. We're going to be covering that tomorrow, all the ins and outs about how the stock market has changed because of the shutdown. So make sure that you guys take the opportunity to like and subscribe for that. Hit the notification bells for that so that even if you're watching us on Twitch or Twitter, that you can get updated in real time as to what we got going on and any late breaking news that we have at the top of the hour, you will hear about it because at least the first 10 or 15 minutes of the show is taken out for the post live. So if you want anything at the top of the hour, you want to hit that notification button. But I give you this information to help you become higher value men. Your ability to take first person accountability and reactions towards your personal life and your business life helps you improve your personal life and your business life. So I give you guys the financial information so that you're making more money, and I give you better decision making information so that you're not making decisions that negatively impact your money. Between the two, you should be able to improve the holisticness of your life. And ladies, while we are about 61% male driven podcast from the male's perspective, I am providing you ladies with the same quantity of information because it is not exclusive to just the men. And y'all can utilize this information to make yourselves higher value women, where you can now start trying to find people with the same mentality and the same drive as you. Because if there's anything in your life that you do not like that is inside of your control, you can proactively make that change once you recognize change is needed. Then you can navigate around the things that are outside of your control. You should be focusing today to make your later greater and build the type of lifestyle so that tomorrow you will have a better life. You are working this year in 2025 so that your 2026 is better than your 2024. You want to start making the kind of decisions going into 2026 where your New Year's resolution for 2026 is to have more in 2027 than what you had in 2025. You want to be trying to see an escalation of service. And then one more thing I'm going to tell you as we walk out the door. He said it affects everyone. Yes, it does. One of the things I want to tell you before we walk out of the door is I want you guys to recognize that you also have to celebrate your successes. So while you have your 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20 year plan, while you have all of these things that you're trying to do, you want to make sure that you take a step back every day, every week, every month, every year, and recognize the accomplishments that you have made so far. Look at where you were, look at where you are, look at where you want to be. Be grateful of how far you've come from where you used to be, and then strive to get as far to, if not past, where you want to get to as possible. Never stop moving forward, but always be grateful about how far you've come from where you used to be at. It's not about dwelling on the past. It's about appreciating your efforts and appreciating the success that you have, even if it's minimalistic, even if you started off with 3 steps back, 2 steps forward. You might feel like you're losing ground, but eventually it's going to be 3 steps forward. Eventually it's going to be 6 steps forward. Even if it's 7 steps forward, 2 steps back, you're going to start making more progress in the forward direction than what you are backstepping. And looking back at where you used to be at when you was living off of loans and living off of payday loans and borrowing money from friends and family members and going into collections, and you go from that to having all your bills paid on time. Even if you don't have an abundance of wealth in the stocks and bonds and stuff, you are no longer owing people your next paycheck before you even got your paycheck. Y'all remember living those lifestyles where you used to tell folks, man, my money spent before I get it. Eventually you're going to follow my lead and you will end up in a position where you have more money than you have stuff that you need to spend. And that's a change. That's a success. That's an improvement. So as you continue to improve, as you continue to progress, you don't increase your spending power when you increase your income. If you have to get a raise, get a promotion, get a second job, and you increase your income, you stay at that same spending limit or lower so that you have extra money to put aside so that stuff like this doesn't negatively impact you. And that is how you build for your early retirement, your retirement, emergencies, government shutdowns, lost wages, delayed pay. Michael says plan for the future and hope for the best. Expect the worst, hope for the best, and take whatever happens in between. But if you're expecting the worst and you're preparing for the worst, as things start heading towards the worst, you should be able to circumvent that and do preventative maintenance. If you're doing preventative maintenance on worst case scenarios, then you should not experience those worst case scenarios. You change the oil in your car before your engine blows. You put gas in your car before you run out of gas. You change that slow leak before you have a blowout. These are the things that you do proactively before you have catastrophic failure. You get AAA so that you have a tow truck to tow your car. So you need to invest in ways so that you have extra money to take care of unnecessary and unexpected expenses. This is what we need to learn. Now, I want to thank you guys. Thank you guys on Twitter. Special shout out to Steven. Thank you guys on Twitch. Special shout out to Mr. Pibbs and Danny Steffen. And thank you very much, Michael, here on YouTube. I really appreciate you guys for coming to this and that. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I should be seeing you guys tomorrow night.
Chase validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt upon the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher, constantly making my own climb. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command.